Disclaimer. This is a fictional story featuring AI-generated characters. What happens when one of America's most cherished actresses steps onto live television only to find herself ambushed by a co-host who refuses to play nice? Today's story isn't about promotion, fashion, or feel-good laughter. It's about silence, confrontation, and the clash so unexpected even the audience didn't know whether to cheer or gasp. Julia Roberts walked onto the set of The View with grace, but she didn't stay long. Before we dive in, make sure to read the disclaimer and subscribe to the channel. And leave a comment below, because this fictional dramatization only gets wilder with every word exchanged. The applause was thunderous. You could feel the walls of the View studio pulse with energy as Julia Roberts, the woman who had once lit up the screen in Pretty Woman, Erin Brockovich, and a dozen other American classics, made her entrance from stage right. Dressed in a sleek cream pantsuit with soft curls bouncing out her shoulders, Julia wore the kind of radiant smile that made even the production staff pause. Whoopi Goldberg stood first, welcoming her with open arms. Sonny Hostin followed, clapping with genuine warmth. Even Ana Navarro, sitting in as a guest host that week, offered a friendly nod. And then there was Joy Behar. Joy clapped, but not with enthusiasm. It was a polite, reserved motion, the kind you give when social expectations require it, but your heart isn't in it. There was history between her and Julia Roberts, not public, not viral, just the kind that lives quietly between two strong women who view the world through very different lenses. Julia took her seat. The stage lights softened. The camera panned for a close-up. The audience hushed, ready for what everyone assumed would be a charming, easy segment. "Julia," Whoopi began, her voice calm and familiar, "welcome back to The View. It's always a pleasure." "Thank you," Julia said, crossing her legs, still smiling. "It's good to be back." Sonny leaned in. "You look amazing, and congrats on the new film. It's getting incredible early buzz." Julia laughed gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Thank you. It's a small, intimate story, not one of those flashy Hollywood things, but it meant something personal." "You always bring meaning to your roles," Anna added. "That's why we love you." Julia nodded in gratitude, genuinely appreciative. The first few minutes passed like clockwork. Talk of the new film, the changing landscape of cinema, and how she selects roles in her 50s versus her 30s. But it didn't take long for things to shift. Joy had been quiet, her arms folded, watching, listening, waiting, and then she jumped in. "So, Julia," Joy said suddenly, voice clipped and sharper than the others, "you talk about choosing meaningful roles now. That's nice. But let me ask you, when it comes to using your voice outside of film, like in real life, why so quiet?" The room tensed, just slightly. Julia's smile thinned. "I'm sorry," she said, still composed. Joy tilted her head. "I mean, you're Julia Roberts. You have a massive platform. But in the last few years, on the big issues, we haven't heard much from you. A lot of celebrities have stepped up. You haven't. Why is that?" Sonny's eyes flicked sideways. Anna looked down at her notes. Whoopi didn't say a word. Julia took a breath. "I believe in being thoughtful, not loud for the sake of being loud. I support the causes I care about in private, and I act where I feel it matters." Joy nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "But don't you think silence from powerful people, especially women, helps the wrong side?" The audience let out a soft, collective murmur. Some shifted in their seats, others sat straighter, sensing a shift they hadn't expected from the usually playful tone of the show. Julia didn't flinch, not yet, but her smile vanished. "I don't believe silence equals harm. I think there's a difference between performative outrage and real action. And I try to live in the latter." Whoopi cleared her throat, sensing the edge. "Maybe we let Julia tell us more about her work on the film." but Joy cut her off. "I just think," Joy continued, "that if you're going to be one of the most recognizable faces in America, it wouldn't hurt to take a public stand once in a while. I mean, a tweet at minimum. Is that really so hard?" The tension in the studio was now unmistakable. The audience wasn't sure whether to laugh, clap, or freeze. Julia leaned back in her chair slightly, her body language shifting from open to guarded. She said carefully, "It's not about difficulty. It's about integrity. I don't believe in speaking unless I have something genuine to say." The tension could have been sliced with a studio mic boom. For a moment, no one on the panel said a word. The silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, full of meanings unspoken, questions left hanging. The audience sat still, unsure whether they were witnessing an awkward pause or the start of something bigger. Julia inhaled slowly, her fingers lacing together in her lap. She wasn't new to interviews. She'd been grilled by the best, charmed the toughest late-night hosts, and outwitted more than one tabloid rumor. But this was different. This wasn't playful. It wasn't about a film or a past co-star or even an edgy question about relationships. This was personal and political. She glanced at Whoopi, who gave her a brief nod, signaling she could take it wherever she wanted. Sunny shifted in her seat, clearly uneasy. Even Anna Navarro raised an eyebrow, subtly shaking her head in Joy's direction as if to say, "Not the time." Julia leaned slightly forward and adjusted her posture, not defensive, but resolute. "Julia," she said gently, "I understand the urge to want everyone in the spotlight to raise their voice, especially in the world we live in now. I really do. But I also think there's a growing pressure on public figures to become activists in every direction. And sometimes that turns authenticity into performance." The crowd gave a soft round of applause. Julia hadn't raised her voice, she hadn't snapped, but her words landed firmly. Joy tilted her head. "So, you think the celebrities who speak out are performing?" A trap. Julia recognized it instantly. "No," I said, calmly. "I think some are deeply committed and sincere. Others maybe feel forced to say something to stay relevant or avoid criticism. And I don't judge either. I just don't want to be part of the echo if I don't have something new or helpful to add." Whoopi jumped in quickly, hoping to redirect. "Let's talk about the film for a minute. The character you play is a woman who sacrifices her own peace to speak up for her son. That's a big emotional arc. Did that role challenge your personal values?" Julia smiled softly, the tension easing ever so slightly. "It did. It forced me to think about what I'd be willing to risk for someone I love. What silence costs when it's protecting others versus when it's self-protective. That's where the story lives." Anna chimed in, adding warmth back into the conversation. "And the performance is breathtaking. It's subtle, restrained, but you feel every beat. That's a rare skill." Julia offered a sincere thank you. The moment almost passed. Almost. But Joy wasn't finished. "So, let's go back to that," she said, her voice firmer now. "You said earlier that silence doesn't mean harm, but in your own movie, your character stays quiet at first, and that has consequences, right?" Julia froze slightly. The smile didn't fade, but the sparkle in her eyes dimmed a little. The comparison was deliberate. Julia was turning Julia's fictional role into a metaphor for her real-life choices. Sunny sat up straighter. "We're talking about a character, Joy. Let's not confuse fiction with reality." Joy shrugged. "Art imitates life. It's worth discussing." The audience was still silent, waiting. Julia now faced a decision: keep playing the careful Hollywood guest or address the provocation head-on. She exhaled through her nose and looked directly at Joy. "You know, Joy, there's something deeply ironic about what you're doing right now." Joy blinked, caught off guard. "You're using your platform, rightfully, to challenge people to speak. But what you're doing to me right now isn't a conversation, it's a cornering." You're not interested in dialogue, you're interested in judgment. And for someone who's built a career on calling out unfairness, I'd hope you'd recognize the difference. A single ooh echoed from the left side of the studio audience. Joy's lips pursed. I'm holding you accountable, Julia. That's not cornering. That's journalism. Julia gave a tight smile. Then maybe we have very different definitions of both. It was no longer an interview. It was a standoff. Not just between two women, but between two belief systems. One that believed silence could be graceful, and one that believed silence was complicity. Whoopi held up a hand. All right, ladies, let's take a breath. We've got more show left and a lot of people watching. Julia nodded. She didn't look at Joy again. She turned slightly to Whoopi, posture relaxed, but eyes sharper now, as if she was reevaluating the space she had walked into. Let's move on, she said, her tone smooth but final. But it wasn't all right. Not really, because something had shifted in the room, on the set, and within Julia herself. She had come here to promote a film. Now she was realizing she had walked into a battleground.
The shift was now undeniable. While Julia composed herself with elegance, the atmosphere on set had changed completely. It wasn't the kind of heat that comes from raised voices or open hostility. Not yet. It was the kind that simmers just beneath the surface, waiting for one spark to light the fuse. And Joy Behar, she was holding the match. Whoopi attempted to regain control of the segment, gesturing to the teleprompter and trying to pivot. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about, but Joy leaned forward again, interrupting. Before we go to break, I just want to say, Julia, if you feel cornered, that's not the intention. But if someone asks you a tough question, that's not judgment. That's part of being on this couch. There was a sharpness in her tone. Not loud, not aggressive, but laced with the kind of smug certainty that makes people flinch more than a shot would. Julia didn't flinch. Instead, she turned to Joy slowly, her face calm but her voice suddenly precise, honed like a scalpel. It's interesting, she said, how certain people use tough questions as a mask for personal agendas. If you wanted to have a real conversation, you would have asked to do this off camera, not ambush me during a segment meant to highlight a film about healing and love. The audience murmured again, and this time it wasn't just discomfort, it was intrigue. The viewers at home, no doubt, were already sitting forward in their seats. Joy's brows lifted. You think I ambushed you? I think you use this platform, Julia replied, not to explore a topic, but to paint a picture. And I just happen to be the canvas today. Whoopi cut in. All right, we need to reset. Let's all take a breath here. We love honest conversations, but we also want to be respectful of our guests. But the mood had already fractured. Ana Navarro, who had remained relatively quiet until now, finally spoke, her voice measured but firm. Joy, I think Julia is making a fair point. There's a difference between a question and an interrogation, especially when someone is here to discuss a film, not defend their activism resume. Joy scoffed lightly. I'm not interrogating anyone. I'm asking the same questions our audience asks. Julia Roberts is a public figure. That comes with accountability. And I've answered you, more gracefully than you probably deserved. That line hit like a thunderclap. The audience gasped, some even applauding instinctively, not in mockery, but in sheer shock. Julia, long known for her charm and diplomacy, had just delivered a direct strike. Not cruel, not rude, but undeniably powerful. Joy narrowed her eyes, visibly irritated now. Her usual smirk faded. So now I don't deserve grace because I asked you why you've been quiet. That's rich. Julia didn't blink. You weren't asking. You were cornering, and that's what's rich. Sonny stepped in. Okay, we're veering into something that's clearly hitting nerves, and that's okay, but let's keep this constructive. Julia, if you don't want to speak on certain issues, that's your right. And Joy, you've made your point. Whoopi again gestured to move the segment on. Let's shift gears. We've got a clip from the film queued up, but it was too late. Julia slowly removed her mic pack. She stood, not in haste, but with a calm that was more commanding than any outburst could ever be. She wasn't rattled, she was finished. I came here out of respect for the show, for your platform, for the women who watch this program and deserve thoughtful, nuanced conversations. But what I walked into today was something else. Joy rolled her eyes. You're walking out because someone challenged you? No. I'm walking out because someone disguised a hit job as journalism. And frankly, I don't need the airtime that badly. Gasps, audible gasps. Julia looked directly at Whoopi and Sunny and gave a soft, sincere smile. Thank you both, truly, for your warmth and professionalism. I wish this had gone differently. She turned and walked off stage, heels echoing through the silent studio. Not a single member of the audience clapped, not out of disapproval, but in sheer disbelief. They had just witnessed a real moment, a rupture in the TV fantasy. And Joy Behar, she sat back in her chair, arms folded again, staring into the middle distance. The look on her face wasn't victory, it was realization. She had pushed too far, and the world had just seen it. Whoopi broke the silence. Let's take a break. The show cut to commercial, but the headlines were already writing themselves.
The screen faded back in from commercial, but the energy was completely different. Gone was the polished professionalism and daytime sparkle. When The View returned live, the panel was down one guest, and the audience could feel the weight of what had just happened. Julia Roberts, America's sweetheart, had walked off, not because of a casual disagreement, but because of something deeper, a line that had been crossed live in front of millions. Whoopi Goldberg looked directly into the camera as the applause light tried and failed to warm the room. "Welcome back," she said dryly. "As you just saw, things got a little tense before the break." The studio audience offered a few scattered claps, unsure how to respond. Joy Behar sat with her arms folded tightly, her jaw clenched, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, not quite regret, but maybe surprise. She hadn't expected Julia to walk off, and she hadn't expected the wave of silence that followed. Sunny Hostin broke it first. "I think what just happened speaks for itself," she said, her tone calm but firm. "We pride ourselves on asking tough questions here, but there's a difference between pushing for accountability and creating a hostile space." Anna Navarro nodded. "Exactly. Julia came here for a conversation, not a courtroom. And whatever your intention was, Joy, it landed badly, on everyone." Joy didn't blink. "Oh, give me a break," she said, her voice thick with defiance. "Since when is asking a celebrity why they won't speak out on social issues off limits? Isn't that what we do here? Or do we only hold people accountable when it fits a narrative we like?" Whoopi raised her hand, attempting to calm the friction. "It's not about asking tough questions, Joy. It's about how they're asked, and the tone, and the timing." Joy threw her hands up. "I didn't insult her. I asked her why she's been quiet. You know what's more insulting? These millionaires who stay silent while the world burns. But when I bring it up, suddenly I'm the villain?" Sunny's expression darkened. "You didn't just ask her a question. You pushed. You implied she was complicit. You questioned her integrity, not her opinion. That's a personal attack, Joy." The audience let out a few soft gasps, sensing that the drama hadn't ended with Julia's departure. Anna leaned in now. "You accused her of having privilege, as if she's not allowed to approach activism in her own way. What you don't realize is that not everyone needs to be loud to be effective. Some people act quietly, behind the scenes. And frankly, Julia Roberts has earned the benefit of the doubt." Joy wasn't backing down. "Look, if she walked off, that's on her. Maybe she's not used to being challenged. Not everyone can handle a little heat." Whoopi gave her a side glance. "It wasn't heat, Joy.
It was disrespect, and you know it. For a moment, the table fell silent again. The audience was now fully engaged, not in laughter or applause, but attention. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't pretend. This was a real fracture between women who were supposed to be a team. Then Anna spoke again, softer this time. Joy, even if you thought you were doing the right thing, don't you think it's worth asking why someone like Julia, someone known for grace and patience, would feel the need to walk out? Joy opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. For the first time since the clash began, she looked uncertain, not guilty, but perhaps reflective. Sunny reached for her water, then added, "Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones who walk away quietly, not the ones who stay and argue." And with that, the mood shifted again, not back to comfort, but toward clarity. This wasn't just about Julia Roberts or Joy Behar. It was about tone, about how women talk to each other, about how public figures are expected to perform pain, outrage, activism, or else be accused of cowardice. Whoopi turned back to the camera. Coming up next, we'll take a few audience questions. And yes, we will address what happened. Stick with us. The camera panned out slowly, capturing the awkward but very real energy at the table. 4 women, visibly shaken, not by disagreement, but by a public rupture that no one had scripted and no one could fully undo.
The clip was just under 15 seconds long. No dramatic music, no preamble, no fancy transitions. Just Julia Roberts, standing calmly, removing her mic with practiced grace, thanking Whoopi and Sunny with a nod, and walking off the stage. The sound of her heels, clean, deliberate, echoing, told the whole story. And within minutes, it was everywhere. Before the segment even ended on live television, audience members had already pulled out their phones. Several had caught the moment from different angles. Julia's calm but cold dismissal of Joy, her final words, the tight-lipped poise of a woman not storming off in rage, but stepping away in principle. One post went viral within hours. It was captioned simply, "When Julia Roberts says, 'I don't need the airtime that badly,' you know she's done playing nice." At TVT Daily. The comments poured in. "This is why she's queen. Joy Behar just lost every over 50 fan she had. Julia didn't raise her voice once. That was power. Wow, I've never seen anyone walk out with that much grace." The hashtags trended by afternoon. Hashtag Julia Walks. Hashtag The View Meltdown. Hashtag Joy Crossed the Line. Back on the set, the chairs were rearranged. The following day's episode opened without mention of Julia's name, but the absence was felt. The co-hosts tiptoed around the elephant in the room. Joy looked stiff, defensive, and unusually reserved. But the conversation had already moved beyond her. Media outlets tumped in. Headlines filled entertainment and culture columns. Julia Roberts walks off The View mid-interview. What really happened? Behar's blunder. Did Joy go too far? Roberts exits with class after heated exchange. Late-night hosts cracked jokes about it. Podcasts dissected it. Twitter turned it into a meme. But behind the frenzy, something quieter and more impactful was happening. Julia remained silent. No press conference, no interview, not even a PR statement. But then 3 days later, she posted a single photo on Instagram. It was black and white, her walking off stage captured from behind, just her back, shoulders squared, the light catching her curls, the studio fading into shadows. The caption? "Sometimes the strongest voice is the one that doesn't shout. JR." That post received over 9 million likes within 48 hours. And in the comments, a flood of praise from fellow celebrities and industry professionals. Classy to the end, Reese Witherspoon. You handled that with more poise than most ever could, Viola Davis. Plop, 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 Michelle Obama. Even fans who hadn't followed her career closely were pulled in. I wasn't even a huge Julia Roberts fan before this, but now, total respect. She didn't get emotional, she didn't get loud, she just walked. That's a message. Back at The View, producers scrambled. Internal discussions were reportedly tense. Joy Behar was said to be unapologetic but reflective. Her official comment, issued through the network, read, "I stand by my role as a journalist and as someone who asks questions others are afraid to ask. That said, I never intend to make any guest feel attacked." It didn't help much. The next week, viewership dipped by nearly 12%, not just because of the incident, but because the public had begun questioning something deeper. Was this still a show that respected all women, or just the loudest ones? Back in California, Julia went back to work. She resumed press junkets for the film, but when asked about The View, she gave the same answer every time. "I said what I needed to say, on air and in silence." And that was that.